Asmodeus, one of the 7 princes of hell, is often regarded as the embodiment of lust, but his legacy stretches far beyond this single vice. His story, deeply intertwined with biblical, apocryphal, and mythological accounts, paints a complex picture of a demon whose very existence challenges conventional notions of evil. Known for his cunning, manipulation, and influence, Asmodeus plays a pivotal role in several important texts and traditions, making him a figure of both dread and fascination. While he is most infamous for his association with lust and sexual desire, his influence spans other realms, from the lives of King Solomon to the realm of angels. Asmodeus's influence isn't confined to just one dimension of evil. It is multifaceted. His involvement in tormenting individuals like Sarah in the Book of Tobit, or his complex relationship with King Solomon, reveals a demon whose actions often straddle the line between wrath, deception, and a more twisted form of affection. Unlike other demons who revel solely in destruction, Asmodeus's path is marked by manipulation. He orchestrates destruction in a way that leaves scars, not just physically, but emotionally, tempting his victims into despair. His story is further complicated by his portrayal in various traditions. The apocryphal Book of Tobit offers a window into his actions, where he is seen as the cause of Sarah's tragic fate. She becomes the unwilling target of his lustful yet destructive influence, causing the deaths of 7 of her suitors on their wedding night. This curse seems designed to torment Sarah not just physically, but emotionally, as each death comes with its own burden of guilt and helplessness. It is only through the intervention of Tobias, guided by the archangel Raphael, that Asmodeus's power is finally broken, though his defeat comes at a heavy price. Even after his defeat, his shadow lingers over the lives of those he has touched, continuing to affect them in ways that can never fully be erased. Asmodeus's name, originating from ancient languages like Persian, carries with it a weight of historical significance. The meaning of the name itself suggests a being of wrath, but his actions tell a different story. While he is often labeled a demon of rage, his personality goes beyond the fiery wrath associated with other fallen angels. He operates more subtly, using his intelligence to manipulate desires and to subtly inflame passions, which makes him an even more dangerous and insidious force in many ways. His wrath isn't always immediate or explosive. Instead, it simmers and festers, erupting only when necessary. This subtlety in his nature makes Asmodeus a complicated figure. Though he is often associated with the sins of lust, he manipulates that passion in such a way that it becomes something much more destructive. Asmodeus does not merely act out of base sexual desire, he uses it as a tool to control and break his victims. Lust, in his hands, becomes a weapon of psychological warfare, one that turns love and desire into something monstrous. His relationship with Sarah in the Book of Tobit is a perfect example of this. He curses her not out of love or lust in the traditional sense, but to torment her emotionally and spiritually, ensuring that no one would ever love her without the shadow of his curse hanging over her life. The demon's manipulation goes further than just inflicting physical harm or emotional distress. It is about control. Lust, in his case, is a tool for domination rather than a simple indulgence of desire. This complexity makes Asmodeus far more dangerous than a one-dimensional demon. His power lies in his ability to make human emotions like desire and passion turn against themselves. Asmodeus is the embodiment of the darkest, most hidden parts of human nature. Those desires we often refuse to confront, the ones that, when left unchecked, have the potential to ruin lives. Despite his overwhelming presence in dark folklore and religious texts, the name Asmodeus is not commonly found in most Christian scriptures. Instead, his presence is felt through indirect references and allusions, particularly in the Old Testament. One such mention occurs in 2 Kings 17:34, where a name similar to his, Ashima, appears. This name has long been associated with Asmodeus, though the references to him in this context are vague and non-specific. However, the influence of Asmodeus as a symbol of temptation and moral corruption stretches far beyond these cryptic mentions. His role in other cultures and religious contexts only adds layers to his legend, portraying him not only as a demon, but as a key figure in the spiritual battle between good and evil. In many ways, Asmodeus is a figure that blurs the lines between demon and mythological archetype. While some see him solely as a malevolent force, others interpret his role as more complex. Asmodeus represents not just the temptation of flesh, but the allure of destruction itself. He stands as a cautionary tale of how unchecked passions, especially those born of lust, can lead to ruin. This duality is what makes Asmodeus's character so intriguing. He is not simply the villain, but the embodiment of our darker desires, pushing humanity to question the nature of temptation and the consequences of indulging in it. The name Asmodeus is often understood through its etymology, which traces back to ancient languages. The Persian origins of the name suggest a being who embodies wrath and destruction, fitting for a demon whose influence spreads like a toxic infection. Asmodeus, through his very name, evokes an image of fiery fury, a creature whose existence is linked to the unleashing of mankind's deepest and most uncontrolled urges. Yet his wrath is not the physical force of storms or earthquakes. Instead, it is the kind of rage that bubbles beneath the surface, simmering with subtlety until it is ready to strike. Though Asmodeus is often seen as a demon linked with lust, his true power lies in his ability to manipulate emotions. His name speaks to a wrath that manifests not in an open outburst, but in a quiet, consuming fire. This manipulation of human desires reflects his role as a deceiver, a demon who works behind the scenes, influencing thoughts, driving people to indulgence, and ultimately, ruin. Unlike other demons whose actions are more direct, Asmodeus's influence works on the subconscious level, triggering desires in others without them realizing it. He whispers to the most private corners of the mind, and through subtle gestures, he encourages indulgence in the very things that destroy individuals from within. The demon's role in lust is tied to more than just a superficial interpretation of sexual desire. Lust, in Asmodeus's hands, is a weapon, one that targets the very essence of human relationships. He is a master of causing chaos in the lives of his victims, particularly those who fall prey to their own unchecked desires. His manipulation of human emotion, turning love, devotion, and intimacy into something perverse, is his true domain. In a sense, Asmodeus is the patron of those who find themselves trapped in destructive patterns, unable to break free from their own internal cravings. Although Asmodeus's presence in the Bible is not as overt as that of other prominent demons, his influence is felt in subtle ways. One of the key indirect references to Asmodeus occurs in 2 Kings 17:34. The verse mentions a group of pagan deities, and within this context, the name Ashima is presented. Many scholars and theologians have linked Ashima to Asmodeus due to the phonetic similarities between the two names. While this connection is not directly drawn in the scripture, the mere mention of a similar-sounding name hints at the pervasive nature of Asmodeus's influence in the ancient world. He is often depicted as a force tied to the spiritual and moral corruption of societies, a demon who lurks in the background of major historical and religious narratives. But it is in the Book of Tobit, an apocryphal text considered canonical in some Christian traditions, that Asmodeus's character truly takes shape. In this story, Asmodeus is not merely an illusion or a background figure. He is one of the central antagonists. His role in the Book of Tobit is not just about causing chaos, but about marking a specific spiritual battle. Asmodeus is the demon responsible for cursing Sarah, the daughter of Raguel. His curse causes the death of Sarah's 7 husbands, all of whom mysteriously perish on their wedding nights. This tragic fate places Sarah in an impossible position. She becomes a pariah, rejected by society due to the death of her husbands, a victim of Asmodeus's wrath and jealousy. The demon's actions are not simply acts of wanton violence. There is an element of sadistic pleasure in his actions, as he appears to revel in the emotional and psychological torment he inflicts. Each death is not just the loss of life, but a moment of deep despair for Sarah. Each failed marriage is a reminder of her cursed fate, one that seems beyond the reach of any earthly intervention. Asmodeus's curse is not just a random act of violence. It is a calculated and cruel attempt to ensure that Sarah remains alone, trapped in a cycle of death and grief. The story takes a turn when Tobias, guided by the archangel Raphael, embarks on a journey that will bring him into direct confrontation with Asmodeus. Tobias's journey is one of both physical and spiritual growth. Raphael, the angelic guide, directs Tobias to use the heart and liver of a fish they catch along the way. The heart and liver are used in a sacred rite, burning them in the presence of Asmodeus, which drives the demon away and finally lifts the curse. This intervention is pivotal, not only because it represents divine intervention in the battle between good and evil, but also because it shows the importance of faith and virtue in overcoming demonic influence. Asmodeus's defeat in the Book of Tobit is not a simple victory. Though he is banished and bound, the consequences of his actions remain long after his defeat. Sarah is finally able to marry Tobias, but the emotional and psychological scars left by Asmodeus's curse are not so easily erased. This lingering effect of Asmodeus's influence reflects his enduring power. Even in defeat, the demon's presence continues to haunt those he touches, leaving behind a trail of emotional devastation and unresolved conflict. It's this aftermath that makes Asmodeus a figure of such complex evil. His actions do not just cause immediate harm, but they leave deep, lasting scars that are not easily healed. The curse that Asmodeus lays upon Sarah in the Book of Tobit is both literal and symbolic, serving as a profound commentary on the destructive power of lust and the emotional devastation it can cause. The repeated deaths of Sarah's suitors are not just the result of Asmodeus's malevolence, but a manifestation of how unchecked desire and manipulation can lead to ruin. Asmodeus's influence isn't just physical, it attacks the very heart of human relationships. His curse represents the destructive potential of lust when it is allowed to dominate, unchecked by love, compassion, or virtue. His role in the story shows how demons like him don't merely sow destruction in a direct way. They manipulate emotions, thoughts, and desires to achieve their ends. This theme of manipulation becomes even clearer as we consider Tobias's journey. His quest is not just about physical trials, but about the struggle to overcome the spiritual forces that seek to control him. Through Tobias's courage and Raphael's guidance, we see that while Asmodeus may have control over the physical world, it is faith, wisdom, and virtue that ultimately defeat him. The act of burning the fish's heart and liver isn't just a physical action. It's a symbolic purification, an expulsion of the corrupting influence that Asmodeus represents. It is only by relying on divine aid and purity that Tobias and Sarah are able to break free from the demon's hold. Asmodeus's eventual binding in Egypt is another important detail that emphasizes his fall from power. In some versions of the story, after Raphael's victory, Asmodeus is not merely defeated and sent away. He is imprisoned, bound in a place of torment. This highlights that, while Asmodeus may be powerful, his reign is not eternal. The demon's power, while formidable, is still subject to divine authority. In the end, his defeat is a reminder that even the most malevolent forces are not invincible. Though Asmodeus's influence continues to ripple through the lives of those he touches, his ultimate imprisonment underscores the triumph of divine power over evil. In the broader context of religious and mythological literature, the story of Asmodeus in the Book of Tobit provides an essential window into the nature of evil as a force that transcends simple acts of violence. Asmodeus is not a mere agent of destruction. He is a manipulator of the human soul, a figure whose actions reveal how easily human desires can be twisted for dark purposes. His defeat is not merely about banishing a demon, but about reclaiming the soul from the depths of temptation and despair. It is about breaking free from the cycle of lust and destruction, a cycle that has haunted Sarah and her suitors for so long. This complex relationship between Sarah, Tobias, Raphael, and Asmodeus raises essential questions about human nature and the nature of evil. It challenges us to consider how easily we are influenced by our desires and how those desires can be manipulated by forces greater than ourselves. Asmodeus's curse on Sarah, his manipulation of love and lust, serves as a warning against the dangers of unchecked desire and the destructive power of forces that seek to exploit our weaknesses. It is only through divine intervention, faith, and inner strength that we can hope to overcome such manipulations and find redemption. Asmodeus's nature has sparked intense debate among theologians, scholars, and mythologists for centuries. While he is typically regarded as the demon of lust, many have argued that he is misunderstood, possibly even a tragic figure in his own right. Some interpretations suggest that Asmodeus's actions, particularly his obsession with Sarah, go beyond mere lust and are tied to a deep, complex emotional need. It is easy to view him as simply a malevolent demon, bent on wreaking havoc for no reason other than pure evil. However, when we look more closely at his story, there are hints that he may be acting from a place of pain, jealousy, or an unrequited desire for connection. In the Book of Tobit, Asmodeus curses Sarah because he is enraged by her beauty and the desire of men to marry her, and it is within this jealousy that his true character begins to emerge. Rather than just being a demon of uncontrolled sexual lust, there's a more tragic element to his role. His curse on Sarah is not simply an act of random destruction. It is a desperate attempt to hold onto her for himself in a twisted and possessive way. While it's clear that his actions are destructive and evil, they also hint at a deeper, emotional flaw: his inability to form real, meaningful connections. The deaths of Sarah's suitors become less about satisfying his own sexual desires and more about ensuring that no one else can have what he desires. In his obsessive, lustful rage, he isolates her, keeping her from the love and companionship that she deserves. The Talmudic representations of Asmodeus present a slightly different angle. In this tradition, Asmodeus, or Ashmodai, is less a terrifying and destructive force and more of a mischievous, even somewhat foolish figure. Here, his malevolent traits are downplayed, and he is portrayed as a more relatable, though still wicked character. This interpretation shifts Asmodeus from a purely destructive demon to a figure who has more depth. Rather than a demon who simply wants to cause harm, this version of Asmodeus is portrayed as one who is caught between his desire to do evil and his own shortcomings. He is not just the embodiment of lust and wrath, but a reflection of the failings of all beings who cannot overcome their baser instincts. The tale of Asmodeus in the Talmud also explores his relationship with King Solomon, a key figure who plays an important role in the mythos surrounding this demon. In these stories, Asmodeus is not only an adversary, but also a tool of divine will, often participating in events that reveal his complex nature. While these stories still emphasize his wickedness, there is a suggestion that Asmodeus is somewhat more human than his Christian counterparts. In these interpretations, Asmodeus's desire to challenge Solomon is not solely rooted in a need to corrupt or destroy, but rather in his desire to prove his own power and superiority. Despite his wicked tendencies, these stories hint at a certain vulnerability in Asmodeus. He isn't just a mindless evil force. He is a creature driven by personal ambition, jealousy, and perhaps even loneliness. His attempt to manipulate and challenge Solomon might be viewed as a reflection of his frustration with his own existence. In many ways, Asmodeus represents a distorted form of human desire, a constant striving for power, control, and recognition, regardless of the cost. It's this emotional complexity that adds an extra layer of intrigue to his character, revealing a demon who is not simply evil for the sake of evil, but one who embodies the darker, more selfish aspects of human nature. In many of the most prominent stories about Asmodeus, especially those involving King Solomon, we see the demon's behavior take on a more tangible form, presenting a clearer picture of his personality. His capture by Solomon is one of the more famous episodes, showcasing the power struggle between human wisdom and the strength of demonic forces. Solomon, known for his legendary wisdom, is able to capture Asmodeus using his cunning and intelligence, showing that even the most powerful demons are not invincible when faced with divine wisdom and control. This episode in Solomon's life is not just about the demon's capture, but about the complex interaction between the two beings. Asmodeus, while caught, still manages to exert a certain amount of power over Solomon's life and kingdom. The capture itself is a testament to the strength of Solomon's authority. However, the interaction that follows, Solomon's dealings with Asmodeus, reveals much about the nature of both. Asmodeus's capture is not merely an act of force, but a psychological battle. Solomon's wisdom enables him to bind the demon, but it is the struggle of wills that makes the encounter significant. Asmodeus, though imprisoned, manages to influence events, subtly guiding the fate of the kingdom. It is in this moment that we see his true power, not necessarily through brute strength, but through manipulation and trickery. His interactions with Solomon show that while Solomon might have had the upper hand, he still struggled with the disruptive influence of Asmodeus in his life. Perhaps one of the most significant aspects of this story is Asmodeus's role in Solomon's temple. The demon is said to have helped Solomon acquire the materials necessary for the construction of the temple, including a keystone known as the Nexian stone. This contribution, while seemingly odd given his malevolent nature, is a critical piece of the story that underscores Asmodeus's multifaceted character. His role in the temple construction may seem like an unlikely partnership between good and evil, but it highlights the complex interplay of forces that shape both human and divine history. In many mythological and religious texts, the idea of cooperation between forces of good and evil is a common motif. Asmodeus's involvement in Solomon's temple suggests that, like many other demonic figures, he is a character who operates within a system of duality, capable of both harm and help, destruction and construction. This duality is what makes Asmodeus such a compelling figure. He is not simply a destroyer, but a being who embodies the full range of emotions, from vengeance and jealousy to a more complex form of cooperation. His interaction with Solomon shows that even the most malevolent beings can sometimes play a role in the grander design of the universe, for better or worse. The tale of Asmodeus's capture and his role in the construction of the temple also highlights the ongoing struggle for control. Though Asmodeus is captured and bound by Solomon, his influence does not disappear. Instead, it lingers like a shadow, influencing the lives of those around him. This is perhaps the most potent aspect of his character, his ability to insinuate himself into the affairs of mortals, to influence events even when seemingly defeated. His escape from Solomon's control and his continuing attempts to disrupt Solomon's kingdom suggest that Asmodeus is a force that cannot be easily contained. His struggle against Solomon is not just physical. It is a battle of wills, of influence, and of the ability to bend the world to his desires. Ultimately, Asmodeus's role in Solomon's life demonstrates the complexity of his nature. He is a being of great power, capable of immense destruction, yet his ability to work within the system of Solomon's rule and the construction of the temple shows that he is far more than just a simple demon. He is a figure who embodies the complexities of human desire, ambition, and the constant push and pull between light and dark. His struggle with Solomon serves as a powerful reminder that even the most evil forces are often more multifaceted than they appear at first glance. Asmodeus is often depicted as a powerful and dangerous demon, but there are moments in his narrative where his emotions and human-like traits become more apparent. His personality is filled with contradictions that add depth to his character and make him far more complex than the typical portrayal of a one-dimensional evil force. One of the most intriguing aspects of Asmodeus is his ability to show a form of pity and mockery. Despite being a demon of lust, wrath, and chaos, there are instances where he displays a deeper emotional intelligence that is both unsettling and revealing. These moments challenge the more conventional depictions of demons as purely destructive and devoid of any form of empathy. For example, there is the story of Asmodeus's interactions with King Solomon, which highlight a side of the demon that is not typically associated with evil. Solomon, in his wisdom, was often able to manipulate the circumstances around him, but Asmodeus's interactions with Solomon were far from one-sided. While Solomon tried to exert control over Asmodeus, the demon constantly taunted and mocked him, undermining Solomon's sense of authority. Asmodeus would occasionally show mockery in his refusal to obey Solomon's commands, presenting a personality that was both defiant and strategic. This mockery was not simply the act of a rebellious being. It was a calculated emotional maneuver, a way for Asmodeus to show his disdain for the king's wisdom and challenge his dominion over him. But beyond mockery, Asmodeus also has moments of pity, and these instances further complicate his character. One of the most striking examples of this emotional complexity is when Asmodeus feels pity for a widow, as mentioned in some versions of the Talmud. The demon's rare moments of empathy toward a human being reveal that he is not entirely devoid of compassion, though his actions often defy the positive potential of those emotions. Asmodeus's pity, much like his mockery, is not straightforward. He doesn't express it in ways that are typically associated with goodness. Instead, his pity can come across as twisted, as if he recognizes the vulnerability of others only to manipulate it for his own purposes. This mixture of emotions makes him a much more complex character than simply a demon of lust and destruction. Despite his occasional pity, Asmodeus's behavior is predominantly marked by a desire to undermine and disrupt, often to the point of creating chaos for the sake of chaos. He is a figure who thrives on instability and emotional turmoil, whether in the lives of Sarah and Tobias or Solomon. Asmodeus seems to take pleasure not only in the suffering of others, but in the emotional vulnerability that comes with that suffering. This emotional manipulation is a key feature of his character, further distancing him from the simple role of a demonic entity. At the same time, Asmodeus's apparent emotional depth highlights the inherent contradiction in his nature. He is neither entirely malicious nor completely sympathetic. He is a demon who is capable of both cruelty and compassion, but in a way that serves his own ends. His actions, whether they involve the destruction of Sarah's marriages or the mockery of Solomon, are often driven by a personal desire to assert power and control over those around him, even at the expense of his own emotional integrity. His capacity for both mockery and pity creates an emotionally complex and unpredictable figure, one whose motivations cannot always be easily understood. Asmodeus's deceptive nature is another central aspect of his personality. Throughout his appearances in various texts, he is often seen attempting to manipulate or control others, either through direct actions or through subtle means of influence. His deceptive traits are most evident in his attempts to take over King Solomon's throne and even bed Solomon's wives, demonstrating his desire not just for power, but for dominance over Solomon's most personal aspects of life. These attempts to control Solomon's kingdom are not just the actions of a power-hungry demon. They represent a deeper desire to undermine the authority and wisdom of the king. Asmodeus's efforts to usurp Solomon's position reveal a profound understanding of how to exploit the weaknesses of those in power. His manipulations are not limited to physical strength or intimidation. They are psychological, probing the king's vulnerabilities. This strategic manipulation underscores the nature of Asmodeus as a master of subtlety, someone who seeks to achieve his goals through clever deception rather than brute force. In this sense, he is more dangerous than most demons, for he understands how to wield influence over both individuals and entire kingdoms. The myth of Asmodeus and Solomon emphasizes this subtle form of domination. Asmodeus's desire to control Solomon's wives is not just about lust, it is a calculated effort to diminish Solomon's authority and break the king's moral standing. This effort to destroy Solomon from within highlights a central aspect of Asmodeus's character, his ability to target the most intimate and vulnerable parts of a person's life. Solomon's attempts to resist Asmodeus's advances on his throne and personal life only further reveal how thoroughly the demon has infiltrated the king's world. Even though Solomon manages to maintain control, it is clear that Asmodeus is a constant source of disruption and anxiety, a reminder that no matter how wise or powerful one may be, there are always forces capable of undermining that authority. At the same time, Asmodeus's manipulation of Solomon and his wives shows his skill in emotional and psychological warfare. His power lies not just in his ability to cause physical harm, but in his ability to plant seeds of doubt, jealousy, and mistrust. By attempting to disrupt Solomon's closest relationships, Asmodeus creates instability within the kingdom, leading to a deterioration of trust and order. This emotional disruption is a crucial part of his strategy. By sowing chaos in the hearts of Solomon's inner circle, Asmodeus undermines the very foundation of the king's rule. Solomon, despite his wisdom, is vulnerable to Asmodeus's influence, which ultimately drives the king to a place of fear. The constant threat of Asmodeus's return and his ability to disrupt Solomon's life on multiple levels lead to a deep-seated anxiety. Solomon's fear of Asmodeus is not just about the demon's power over the physical world, but about his ability to infiltrate the king's emotional and psychological landscape. This fear of losing control, of having his authority and personal life torn apart by an invisible and insidious force, is a key aspect of Solomon's struggles with Asmodeus. Ultimately, Asmodeus's manipulation of Solomon's throne and personal life shows just how deeply he can affect the world around him. He is a demon who thrives on deception, using subtlety and psychological manipulation to achieve his goals. Unlike other demons who might use brute force to achieve power, Asmodeus operates through emotional and mental dominance, making him a far more dangerous and insidious force. His ability to deceive and manipulate those around him is what makes him not just a demon of lust, but a master of emotional and psychological warfare, able to destroy not just bodies, but hearts, minds, and entire kingdoms from within. This aspect of his character reveals his true power, the ability to control, deceive, and break the spirits of those who stand against him. Asmodeus's mythological representations in various grimoires, such as the Lesser Key of Solomon, offer a glimpse into the terrifying nature of this demon, illustrating his immense power and fearsome appearance. In these texts, he is often described as a demon with multiple heads and a serpent's tail, a monstrous figure that signifies both his physical and symbolic threat to humanity. His appearance, in all its grotesque and unsettling detail, reflects the ancient fear and reverence that surrounded him. He is no ordinary demon, but one whose power transcends the mere ability to cause harm. In the Lesser Key of Solomon, his image evokes both dread and awe. His physical form, replete with multiple heads, each representing a different facet of his nature, highlights the complexities of his personality. These heads, often described as representing different aspects of his power or influence, emphasize how Asmodeus is not merely a singular force of destruction, but a being whose existence is multifaceted, whose reach extends into various forms of evil. This image of Asmodeus, both powerful and terrifying, serves as a reflection of the traditional belief that demons are not only malicious spirits, but also representations of the chaotic forces that threaten the moral and spiritual order of the world. Asmodeus, with his numerous heads and serpentine features, embodies that chaos, a being whose very existence disrupts the balance of both human and divine realms. In these depictions, his physical form acts as a symbol for the destructive power of lust, anger, and revenge, the driving forces behind many of his actions. The serpent's tail, for example, symbolizes the danger that Asmodeus poses to human desires, as serpents are often associated with temptation and corruption, further reinforcing his role as the tempter and corrupter. In these grimoires, Asmodeus's control over human desires and weaknesses is also emphasized, as he is often described as a demon who leads people into sin, particularly through lust and greed. The Lesser Key of Solomon positions him not just as an adversary to the faithful, but as a manipulator of the most base human instincts. His multiple heads represent the diverse ways in which he can tempt and corrupt, making him a demon who can twist human desires to his will. His form and abilities make him a force to be reckoned with, capable of influencing individuals and communities alike. These representations of Asmodeus as a multi-headed serpentine figure only serve to deepen his aura of terror, showing that he is not a simple demon to be dismissed, but a force that exists to subvert and destroy. At the same time, the Lesser Key of Solomon does not solely focus on Asmodeus's destructive tendencies. While he is undoubtedly a demon of great power, the text also emphasizes his role in the greater cosmic order. His ability to wield power over human desires places him in direct opposition to divine will, and his nature reflects the tension between divine wisdom and demonic influence. Asmodeus, in this sense, can be seen as a symbol of the ever-present threat of temptation and moral decay that challenges human beings on their spiritual journey. His place within these grimoires serves as a reminder of the ongoing battle between good and evil, with Asmodeus representing the seductive allure of the dark forces that seek to undermine spiritual growth. Asmodeus's nature as a seducer and corrupter is also detailed in the Testament of Solomon, another key text that provides an alternate portrayal of his character. In this version of his story, Asmodeus is not just a demon of lust, but a vengeful and aggressive entity whose actions are often motivated by pure malice. This version of Asmodeus is far more active in his efforts to destroy and torment, showing a side of him that is less subtle than the manipulative Asmodeus depicted in the Lesser Key of Solomon. The Testament of Solomon presents Asmodeus as a figure who is not only driven by base desires, but also seeks revenge for past wrongs. This more vengeful aspect of his character presents a stark contrast to the more strategic, manipulative version of Asmodeus, emphasizing his multifaceted nature and the ways in which his actions can vary depending on the circumstances and the forces at play. In this context, Asmodeus is not merely a tempter, but a figure who seeks to destabilize and disrupt everything that is sacred. His wrath is often depicted as being directed at the faithful and the righteous, and his attempts to bring about chaos within Solomon's kingdom showcase his desire to upend divine order. In this light, Asmodeus's role becomes more than just that of a demon leading people astray. He becomes a symbol of the forces that seek to undo all that is good and just in the world. His presence in the Testament of Solomon serves as a reminder of the constant battle between light and darkness, and the demon's aggressive nature underscores the importance of remaining vigilant against the forces of evil that lurk in the shadows. Asmodeus's representation in different religious and cultural contexts is an important aspect of understanding his complex nature. While the Lesser Key of Solomon and the Testament of Solomon offer rich, detailed portrayals of Asmodeus's role in the spiritual realm, other cultural traditions present him in ways that provide additional insight into his character. For example, in Islamic belief, Asmodeus is known as Azazel, a fallen jinn who once served as an angel before his rebellion. Azazel's fall from grace mirrors that of other fallen angels, such as Iblis, who refused to bow to Adam and was cast out of paradise. Asmodeus's fall from grace in Islamic tradition is not just an act of defiance against God, but also a reflection of the jinn's inherent nature, beings who were created from smokeless fire and are endowed with free will, much like humans. Azazel's transformation from a noble being to a fallen demon is a significant part of his story in Islamic theology. This fall from grace provides a deeper understanding of Asmodeus's motivations. In many ways, Azazel's fall can be seen as a direct parallel to the story of Lucifer in Christian tradition. Both are beings who, because of their pride and desire for power, reject divine authority and are cast out of the heavenly realm. However, unlike Lucifer, Azazel's story is tied to the Islamic understanding of jinn, creatures who live in a world parallel to that of humans and are capable of both good and evil deeds. In this sense, Azazel's nature is both similar to and distinct from other demonic figures. While his rebellion is fueled by pride, his fall is tied to the specific characteristics of jinn and their relationship to humans. The role of Azazel, or Asmodeus, in Islamic belief serves as a reminder that temptation and evil exist in many forms, and that even beings created with great power can fall from grace when they choose to defy divine will. His story is one of pride, rebellion, and the consequences of choosing self-interest over obedience to God. Azazel's story highlights the moral lesson that no being, whether human or jinn, is immune to the dangers of arrogance and the destructive force of defiance against the divine. Asmodeus's connection to Lilith and Samael in various traditions further complicates his role. Lilith, often depicted as a dark figure associated with sexuality and rebellion, is said to have been one of the first women created by God before Eve, according to certain Jewish traditions. However, Lilith's refusal to submit to Adam led to her exile from the Garden of Eden. Samael, a figure associated with death and destruction in Kabbalistic thought, is sometimes paired with Lilith as her consort. Asmodeus's connection to these two figures creates a triad of dark, powerful beings who represent the forces of lust, rebellion, and death. This association gives Asmodeus an even greater connection to the realms of temptation and corruption, as he is linked to figures who embody some of the most destructive aspects of human nature. In many ways, Asmodeus's relationship with Lilith and Samael adds layers to his character. While he is already a powerful figure in his own right, his connections to these other dark entities suggest that he is part of a larger network of forces that seek to challenge the divine order. This connection to Lilith and Samael places Asmodeus within a broader cosmic struggle, one in which the forces of darkness and rebellion constantly strive against the forces of light and divine order. Asmodeus in this sense is not just an isolated figure of lust and destruction, but part of a larger, more intricate web of spiritual forces that influence the world in profound and often destructive ways. Asmodeus, often regarded as the demon of lust, is not a simple embodiment of vice, but a multifaceted figure whose emotional intelligence and manipulative abilities make him a far more dangerous force. He possesses an uncanny ability to understand and exploit human emotions, particularly the desires, fears, and weaknesses that lie hidden within individuals. His capacity for emotional manipulation goes beyond the mere temptation of lust. It involves the crafting of situations where the very essence of human relationships and desires can be bent to his will. Asmodeus does not just act upon his victims, he weaves a web of deception, exploiting their innermost yearnings to twist their motivations and break their spirits. This manipulation of desire is what makes Asmodeus so incredibly effective. While many demons or dark forces are depicted as overtly aggressive, Asmodeus's power lies in his ability to manipulate subtly, to plant seeds of doubt, desire, and discontent in the minds of those around him. He is the master of creating the illusion of fulfillment and pleasure, only to reveal that these satisfactions are fleeting, hollow, and destructive. His ability to exploit the passions and vulnerabilities of individuals gives him a power that is both personal and profound. His influence is not based on sheer force, but on a much deeper understanding of the human psyche. He knows exactly how to push the right emotional buttons to drive his victims towards self-destruction. For example, his curse upon Sarah in the Book of Tobit is more than just an act of jealousy or malice. It is an expression of his deep-seated need for control. By causing the deaths of her suitors, Asmodeus does not simply satisfy his lust. He seeks to dominate her, ensuring that no one else can possess her or love her in the way that she deserves. This creates a cycle of despair for Sarah, where she is trapped in her own loneliness and grief, unable to break free from the emotional prison that Asmodeus has built around her. His manipulation of her emotions is a reminder of how powerful he is, not only in physically harming his victims, but in turning their very desires and dreams against them, using their own hopes and fears to trap them in a never-ending cycle of despair. What is particularly chilling about Asmodeus's emotional intelligence is the way in which he can shift between different personas. He is not simply a demon of unchecked lust. He is a being who understands the nuances of human interaction, able to display sympathy when necessary, or to mock and belittle when it serves his purpose. This duality of tenderness and cruelty makes him unpredictable and dangerous. One moment, he can show a rare moment of pity, as seen in his interactions with the widow in the Talmudic texts, and in the next, he can turn that emotion into something twisted, using it as leverage to further manipulate and control. This fluidity in his emotions makes it difficult to ever truly understand or predict his actions, which only heightens his threat. Asmodeus is not bound by any moral code or structure. He is guided only by his need for power, control, and the manipulation of others. The complexity of Asmodeus's character challenges the traditional understanding of demons as pure embodiments of evil. He is not just a being who exists to destroy. He is one who understands the frailties of the human spirit, using them to his advantage. His ability to manipulate human desires and emotions reveals a dark intelligence that goes beyond simple lust. He is a master of psychological warfare, understanding the fragility of human hope and using it to break down his victims from within. Asmodeus may be a demon of lust, but he is also a demon of psychological torment, a master of human weakness and the exploitation of the very things that make us most vulnerable. The emotional complexity and intelligence that Asmodeus possesses are not only powerful tools in his manipulation of individuals, but also serve to emphasize his role as a destabilizing force in the larger scheme of things. His influence goes beyond the personal level, impacting entire communities, kingdoms, and even the divine order. He is not a passive force, simply reacting to the world around him. He is an active agent of chaos, deliberately working to bring down those in power, whether it be through corrupting individuals or creating discord within societies. Solomon's interactions with Asmodeus illustrate this larger, more cosmic battle that the demon wages. Asmodeus is not simply content with causing the personal downfall of a single person. He seeks to undermine the very foundations of Solomon's rule. His manipulation of Solomon's wives, his attempts to disrupt the king's authority, and his desire to control the temple construction all point to his ambition for power. He is a demon who understands the importance of influence and control at a macro level. The psychological torment he inflicts upon Solomon, his constant mockery, his attempts to usurp the king's throne, and his disruption of Solomon's personal life are not just acts of personal malice, but attempts to weaken and destabilize the very structure of the kingdom. This is where Asmodeus's role becomes even more complex. He is not just a figure who wreaks havoc for its own sake, but one who operates with a clear agenda. His goal is not just to corrupt and destroy, but to shift the balance of power, to make those in power doubt themselves and their authority. Asmodeus thrives on creating instability, not just in the hearts of individuals, but in the very fabric of society. This aspect of his character, his desire to destroy systems of power, reveals his true purpose as a being of chaos. His manipulation of Solomon's life is a direct challenge to the order of the world, and his ability to persist, even after being captured, is a testament to his determination to continue sowing discord and chaos. This destabilizing force is not just limited to kings or leaders. Asmodeus's influence spreads beyond royal courts and into the everyday lives of those he encounters. His power lies in his ability to subtly manipulate the desires and emotions of people, leading them astray, making them question their own motivations, and ultimately corrupting their actions. His manipulations are often quiet, invisible at first, but they are pervasive, spreading like a virus through a community or family. The destructive potential of Asmodeus comes from his ability to remain hidden, to operate in the shadows, and to work through human desire, exploiting the very things that people hold most dear. Asmodeus's presence in religious and cultural contexts, from his depiction in Grimoires to his role in Islamic tradition, is a reflection of his complex nature and his role in the cosmic struggle between good and evil. In Islamic belief, Asmodeus is known as Azazel, a once noble jinn who, like many fallen beings, was cast out for his rebellion. Azazel's story is one of pride and defiance, mirroring the narratives of other fallen angels who challenged divine authority. Azazel's fall is tied to his arrogance, his refusal to bow to Adam, and his ultimate rejection of the divine will. Like Asmodeus, Azazel's rebellion is not just a simple act of defiance, it is an expression of the darker forces that drive beings away from divine light. In Islamic tradition, the jinn are seen as creatures of free will, capable of both good and evil, much like humans. This connection between Asmodeus and Azazel underscores the idea that even powerful beings like him are not inherently evil, but are capable of turning away from the light and embracing darkness. Azazel's fall, much like that of Asmodeus, represents the consequences of defiance, pride, and rebellion. His story serves as a warning against the dangers of arrogance and the destructive power of pride, a theme that resonates across many cultures and religious traditions. Asmodeus's role in the larger cosmic order is also evident in his connection to figures like Lilith and Samael. These figures, often associated with darkness, death, and rebellion, form a trio of powerful beings who work against divine authority. Lilith's refusal to submit to Adam and Samael's association with death and destruction are mirrored in Asmodeus's own rebellion. These figures, connected by their shared defiance and dark nature, represent the forces that challenge divine will and seek to undermine the established order. Together they form a powerful coalition of forces that embody lust, death, and destruction, each contributing to the destabilization of the spiritual world. This connection between Asmodeus, Lilith, and Samael highlights the broader implications of their actions. They are not merely isolated figures of evil, but part of a larger, interconnected system of forces that work to corrupt and destabilize the world. Asmodeus, in his interactions with these figures, is not just a demon of lust, but a part of a larger cosmic rebellion against divine order. This connection adds another layer to his complexity, showing that his motivations are not simply personal, but part of a grander, more chaotic struggle between light and darkness. Thanks for watching. Until we meet again.